Hey guys, Ivan Fredette, and as promised, I'm going to share with you the strategies that I've used to get sober, stay sober, and ultimately change my life. I'd like to start off by saying that what I'm going to share with you is not be all end all. I don't claim to be a professional in sobriety or psychology or anything. I'm just sharing with you the strategies that have helped me, what I used, and my own experience. When I started this journey on December 26th, 2020, I really started to grasp who I was, and I didn't like that person. There was many days when I couldn't look in the mirror. I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I sounded. I didn't like the way I acted. I really struggled to look at myself in the mirror and make eye contact with myself. So the first step was for me was to change that. I'm not going to be good to anybody else if I don't like me first. And that's just the hard truth. And in doing so, what I had to do was I had to change my identity. So changing my identity was not an easy thing. If you look around you and you see, what do people know you for? Do people know you for the guy that they can just come by and have a beer with you? Is everything you do based around having beers with the guys, or a Ryan Coke, smoking a joint, having a dart, doing drugs, whatever it is that you use for your dopamine hits? Are you known as somebody who sleeps in? Are you known as the guy that's late for work? What are you known for? What's your identity? How do people see you? So I was known for a lot of things. I was identified a lot of different ways. But what I had to do was, before I could change the way anybody else saw me, I had to change the way I saw me. And that was hard. That was probably the hardest part of my entire journey. Where you are today is not who you are. And your circumstances don't define you. So it doesn't matter what your excuse is, what's happened to you, or what you think has happened to you. If it was deaths in your life, if it was abuse, mentally, sexually, however tragic your experience is, you're still in control of the choices that you make and what you do with it. I used a death as an excuse for a long time to make the choices I was making. And I couldn't change anything until I realized that. There's a book called Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's Viktor Frankl. And he spent 3 years in Auschwitz. And he was a psychologist, I believe. And he teaches us about the ability to have freedom in choices. No matter how difficult your circumstances are, you still have the freedom of choice. If somebody like Viktor Frankl can spend 3 years in a Nazi camp and not allow somebody to take away his choices, it sure puts things in perspective for me that maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. And maybe the things that have happened to me have actually happened for me. So taking responsibility is going to be the first step. Taking responsibility was the first step for me. That nobody's coming to save you. And you have to recognize that the choices that you've made have created the environment that you're in. To change your identity, back to changing your identity, it's important to start recognizing that everything that's happened to you, all of your The environment that you're in was your choice. And once you recognize that, then you can start changing the choices that you make. You're not going to be able to make those choices if you're blaming other people or circumstances for what's happening. If you're in this environment and you're making these choices because it's the story that you're telling yourself. Again, where you are is not who you are. So you have a dialogue going on in your head that tells you what's happening. There's another book, The Untethered Soul. I can't remember the author. The Untethered Soul talks about the voices in your head and how to recognize them and how to pay attention. So if you can really listen and understand when you're making these choices, when you're going down the direction that you have been, you can catch it. Start listening to the dialogue you're telling yourself. Start listening to what's going on inside your mind, in your subconscious. What stories are you telling? And another thing is pay attention to how awful it is. So you have two voices. You have your bitch voice and you have your boss voice. These are the classic cartoons. You have the angel on one side and the devil on the other. Now your bitch voice is the one that's going to take over easiest. It is by far the loudest. You're going to notice that when you really listen and pay attention, the way it talks to you, if anybody else were to talk to you that way, you would probably throat punch them. But if you don't allow somebody else to talk to you like that, why would you allow yourself to talk to you? So start listening, start paying attention to what you're telling yourself, and listen to that dialogue. If you start listening and you start changing those choices, you can start to change your identity. And again, it's important that you change the way you see yourself before you can change the way other people see you. Next time I jump on, I'll talk a little bit more about identity and what I've done to change the direction of the choices I made by changing my identity and how I saw myself. And I'll leave you with this. Nobody's coming to save you. And your circumstances do not define you. And change can happen when you decide to make the choice.